بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين والصلاة والسلام على حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المذنومين المنتخبين المنتجبين الذين كلامهم نور وأمرهم رشد ووصيتهم التقوى وفعلهم الخير وعادتهم الإحسان وسجيتهم الكرم لا سيما للحسين المذلوم المقتول المجروح الأدشان المذبوح من القفا في يوم عاشوراء في أرض كربلاء بلا جرم ولا خطأ الذي غسله دم وكفنه رمال كربلاء مقطع الأعذار مسلوب العمامة والرداء يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس أبى واستكبر وكان من الكافرين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Baqarah very briefly speaks about the story of Adam alayhi salam and the prostration of the malaika. Allah says, إِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ. When we gave an order and we said to the angels, prostrate towards Adam, فَسَجَدُوا. And all of these malaika and angels, they prostrated towards Adam alayhi salam, except for Iblis, who rejected and was arrogant and was of those who are the kafirin, those that cover up the truth. An analysis of this verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about this incident before the human being was created, before the human being was on this earth. The first question that arises is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says when we told the angels, as we know in Quran al-Kareem itself mentions that Shaytan kana min al-jinn, Shaytan was of the jinn. And therefore, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says my order and my hukm was to the angels to do prostration, what problem is it whether Shaytan prostrates or not? For example, today if I said, مثلا, that everyone who has 2 children should stand up, and a person who has 3 children remain sitting, it's not a fault of his, because he's not a part of the category of that hukm and order. In the same way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly says, my hukm and my order was for malaika and angels. And as we know, Shaitan is a jinn made of fire. Therefore, what is the problem whether Shaitan prostrates or whether Shaitan doesn't prostrate? In answering this first question about this verse, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, says that, look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Quran says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O those who believe. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a hukm, O those who believe, this includes those people who in reality are mu'mineen, in reality are believers, but also includes those people who are munafiqeen and hypocrites and disbelievers, but they call themselves mu'mineen. They live amongst the mu'mineen. They classify themselves as believers. So Imam says because they classify themselves to be part of a group and call themselves to be part of a group, when Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, even though they're not believers, that hukm and that statement of O people of Iman also falls upon them. In the same way, he says shaitan is not of the angels. As we know, a battle takes place on this earth before the human being is created between the jinn and between the malaika, between the jinn and the angels. And one of the captives that was taken by the angels back to wherever they went was shaitan. Shaitan is from the jinn, he is taken as a captive. Shaitan then, when he lives amongst the angels and malaika, he causes himself to go higher in the ranks of the angels, get so close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he was identified as an angel even though he wasn't, and he became Sayyidul Malaika. So the Imam says, in the way that a disbeliever classifies himself to be a mu'min, and Allah's statement of Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu falls on that person as well, the Imam says in the same way shaitan is not an angel, a malak, but because he classifies himself as an angel. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I gave an order to the angels, he's also part of it. That if you don't want to be part of this hukam and order, don't call yourself an angel in the first place. Once this first issue has been understood, the second issue that arises is today, jurists and fuqaha clearly state that I cannot do sajda to anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The sajda of ibadah that I do in my salah is only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how then do I bring these two things together, where at one point prostration is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and on the other side Allah himself is telling the malaika and angels to prostrate to someone who's not Allah, to Adam alayhi salam. So some said, look, when Allah said usjudu li Adam, he meant, for example today, when I do sajda, I do it towards qibla, the Kaaba. Here when the Kaaba is in front of me, and I'm prostrating, of course I'm not prostrating towards that Kaaba. That Kaaba is my qibla and my direction. I'm prostrating towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some said the same idea was here, that Adam alayhi salam temporarily was the qibla and the Kaaba of the angels, but sajda was to who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Others said no. Others said sajda actually means when you have humility. So when Allah said usjudu li Adam, he didn't say actually prostrate to Adam alayhi salam. He said be humble in front of Adam alayhi salam. This we don't accept. There are many proofs that in actual fact it was a sajda. Another idea was when the Quran said usjudu li Adam, prostrate, then there is alam. They said this lam means prostrate because of Adam alayhi salam. That once Adam has been created, I wish for you to prostrate. In the way that sometimes a person prostrates out of thanks for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a person prostrates out of forgiveness. In the same way, these people were prostrating after Adam alayhi salam was created, and therefore it was usjudu li Adam. The final understanding was no, it wasn't such that he was a qibla or Kaaba, or that sajda just meant humility and respect, or that sajda was because of Adam. Rather, the malaika actually were told prostrate to Adam alayhi salam. The reason being was that in the way that when I am honoring my parents, I'm actually doing ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah said in the same way, when you honor Adam from this sajda, which isn't a sajda and prostration of worship, you are doing worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The question comes, when we hear about this incident in Quranul Kareem, as we understand one of the greatest honors given to any prophet of God was that he was in the center, and all of the angels, if you think about it, the angels, some of the angels is they spend their time in ibadah anyway, in worship, in dhikr. Jibreel, Mikael, all of these malaika are part of this list. When a person is in such a status that even Jibreel does sajda towards him, this was one of the greatest points of any prophet of God. The question comes, however, is me and you, we both know that the greatest of any prophet, the greatest of any creation is Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Therefore, shouldn't it have been that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the order of sajda and prostration, He should have given it for them to prostrate towards Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa and not Adam alayhi salam? So someone may come to me and say, look, your prophet is very good. However, your prophet isn't better or greater than Adam salamullah alayhi, because he didn't gain this sharaf and honor. This same question needs to be answered, and this same question was asked by one of the non-Muslims of Medina to Amirul Mu'mineen salamullah alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The person says, I came to Abu al-Hasan, and he says, alayhi salam, I asked many different questions. He said, for example, is Nuh greater or your prophet? So Amir al-Mu'mineen said, of course, Rasulullah is greater. Nuh has a great status, but the Prophet of Islam is greater. So this person says, however, Nuh has a very interesting status that your Prophet doesn't have. He said what? He says Nuh alayhi salam was able to do dua and supplication, and all of this earth was covered in water. So Allah caused it to rain because of the dua of Nuh alayhi salam. Amirul Mu'mineen says, yes, this is a very great dua and this is a great honor. However, my Prophet has something greater. He says, why? He says, when Nuh alayhi salam did the dua for the rain, did he do it out of mercy or out of anger for those people? We know that after many years of doing tabligh, he did the dua out of anger that, Ya Allah, punish these people. Amirul Mu'mineen says, however, my Rasul and the Habib of Allah entered into Medina one day. In Medina, there were munafiqeen and hypocrites. There were those that would reject Islam. There were mu'mineen, all types of people. He says, they came and he realized that there was a drought for many months in Medina. They came and they said, Ya Rasulullah, do dua for us. He says, oh individual, the dua of Nuh was out of anger, the dua of Rasulullah was out of mercy. That the Prophet of Islam did a dua. At that moment it rained so much. For 7 days, they rushed to the door of the Prophet of Islam and said, tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it stop raining on the land of Medina. He says, who is greater? This dua that was done was out of mercy and love for all of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, okay, what about Musa salamullah alayhi? He says, what do you mean? He says, Musa alayhi salam, as we know, the prophets of God, they gain revelation in different ways. Some would gain revelation through dreams, like Ibrahim alayhi salam. Others would gain revelation through Jibreel or Malaika. And a third was through a different means, like the burning bush of Musa alayhi salam. Musa is Kalim. He would go to the Mount Sinai and he would speak and converse to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this person says, Ya Abul Hasan, your Prophet is good, but is he as good as Musa? Because Musa alayhi salam would speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly. Amirul Mu'mineen answers, but first put that answer to aside. There's another answer. If someone wants to compare Musa alayhi salam and the Prophet of Islam, the answer is that when Musa alayhi salam wishes to gain revelation and wahi, he has to go to Mount Sinai to receive the revelation, whereas for the Prophet of Islam, revelation would come and knock on his door and ask permission to enter into his house. There was a difference. Revelation would come to the Prophet of Islam, whereas Musa would go to get the revelation. When this person asked, Amirul Mu'mineen says, you say that Musa spoke to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we accept, sallamna. However, there's a difference between the way in which Musa spoke to Allah and the way in which the Prophet of Islam spoke to Allah. He says, what do you mean? Amirul Mu'mineen says, Musa, when he spoke to Allah, where did he speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He says, when he spoke to Allah on this earth, in this world, whereas the Habib of Allah spoke to Allah 110 times on the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Mi'raj, on the arsh of Allah, who has spoken Qaba Qawsayn aw Adna? Then the person asks this question. Okay, we accept. Nuh, Musa, Ibrahim, all of those we accept. But what about Adam alayhi salam? That Adam has something that your Prophet did not receive. What? Adam received something where all of the Malaika, Jibreel, Mikael, Israfil, Israel, all of them did prostration towards Adam. Did your Prophet receive something like this? So before I answer, I'll give you the answer of Amir al-Mu'mineen. If you look today in the ahkam, the religious rulings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. Allah says, Kutiba alaykum as-siyam, fast. Does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fast himself? So of course not. Of course he doesn't fast. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حَجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. Go to Hajj. Does Allah perform Hajj himself? Of course not. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا Mawquta, pray salah during these times. Aqim as-salah. Does Allah pray salah himself? Of course not. There is one ibadah and one worship or one hukm that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I tell others to do it and I do it myself as well. This is that same thing that Amir al-Mu'mineen says, you ask, or you say that Adam, all malaika did sajda to Adam. So how is he greater? How is the Prophet of Islam greater than him? Amir al-Mu'mineen replied, when Allah wished to honor Adam, he told the malaika to honor Adam. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wished to honor the Prophet of Islam, he says, Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. First I send the salutations, then I tell the malaika to send the salutations. That first Allah would send the salutation on the Prophet of Islam, then he would tell the angels, then he would tell the Muslimin and Mu'mineen. So therefore the Prophet of Islam is of course greater. In fact, the riwayat say, yes, Adam's sharaf is great, his honor is great. But who was it that every single person when he prays his salah cannot finish his salah without sending salutations and salam on the Prophet of Islam? Therefore, yes, this was a great incident. However, the Prophet of Islam remains the best of Anbiya, and this doesn't contradict that status. Once this has been understood, the question then comes, what was the reason that shaitan, as the Quran says, Abba, would reject, was stakbara, and was arrogant? What was the reason behind shaitan not doing sajda towards Adam? Here, as we know, scholars gave different ideas as to why he wouldn't prostrate. The most obvious of those, خَلَقْتَنِي مِن نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِن طِينٍ. The analogy that he does, that I was created from fire, he was created from the turab and dust, and fire looks more beautiful, fire is more elegant, therefore I'm greater than this dust that Adam alayhi salam was made by. Therefore I'm greater than him. This, as we understand, this asabiyya, this prejudice, which began at this moment in time, where I look different, I look better, I'm from a different part of the world, I have a certain lineage, therefore I'm greater. This starts with shaitan. We are told with regards to this asabiyya and prejudice that Luqman al-Hakim, for who the Quran mentions a whole surah about Luqman. Luqman is from Africa, Ethiopia. A person who was an African slave, this is Islam, an African slave who was made a slave by one of the Arabs and later released. That person has a whole surah in Quran named after him. Luqman al-Hakim, according to certain reports in history, wasn't that beautiful in the way he looked. A person once came to him and said, how ugly are you, Luqman? Look at your face and look at the way in which... So Luqman replies, when you attack me and insult me, are you insulting the inscribed or the inscriber? Right now I painted something. You didn't like my painting. You're not insulting it. You're insulting me who has painted it. When a person insults another person or says this person is from that part of the world, or this person has this type of image, or this person has been created in this way, you are not insulting that individual. You are insulting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shaitan says in the same way, how? This person made of dust from the earth, the dust where my feet even don't want to touch. When a person's feet become dust, you have the earth, the turab, which is the earth mixed with water. When that gets on your clothes, all you want to do is wash it away. Allah made the insan from this. I should do sajda towards him. So this was the first idea, the asabiyya and prejudice. However, if you look at the mufassireen, there were certain very interesting ideas. There's a person, Ibn Rozbahan, who mentions one of the reasons why shaitan didn't do sajda to Adam. Before I can mention that, a person, if he wishes to get misguided, he will even get misguided from Quranul Kareem. And if a person wishes to gain the lights of hidayah, the rays of guidance, he can gain it from Quran. But if a person wishes from the first place, from the beginning, that I don't want to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he'll use the Quran to support his own viewpoints and get further away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like today you will have certain terrorist organizations that will try to use Quranul Kareem to support their own practices. One example of this that is given is that, as we know, in India there was a Mughal king by the name of Akbar. Akbar had 10 wives, 10 full-time permanent wives. So one day he finds out that in Quran or in Sharia, a person can only have 4 wives at one time. So he began to think, I'm meant to be the king as a Muslim and all of these Muslims follow me. How can I do something so obvious? Everyone knows about my 10 wives. How can I do this? And how can I go against the religion? So he called all different types of scholars, ulama. And he asked some of them, is it true that Islam says you can only have 4? So So the simple scholar said, of course, Islam says 4 only at one time, maximum, that's it. There was one person, one scholar, he asked him. So this scholar knows if I tell him what he wants to know, he'll fill my pockets more. The scholar said, let me think about it. So he read the verse in Quran. He came back and he says, Akbar, you follow exactly what Quran says. He says, why? Quran says, فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاءَ فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَنْ لَا تَعْدِلُوا فَوَاحِدَةً. That you are allowed to have 4. He says, take that Akbar 4. He says, then Quran says you are allowed to have 3. What's 4 plus 3? He says 4 plus 3 is 7. Then Quran says you can have 2. What's 7 plus 2? 9. Then Quran says if you can't be just through all of them, have 1 only. What's 9 plus 1? Just 10. He says you are exactly following Quranul Kareem. That you have 10 wives and Quran mentions 10. If a person wants to gain misguidance, he'll be misguided. If from the beginning he wishes to take Quran and promote his own deviant views, he'll be able to do so. In the same way, Ibn Rozbahan, who is one of these ulama, not from the followers of Ahlul Bayt, and he actually hated the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Ibn Rozbahan says the reason why Shaitan didn't prostrate was what? He says because Shaitan was such a great abid and worshipper, because they say, there's not one place on this earth where Shaitan has not prostrated. Not one place. He says because Shaitan was such a great abid and worshipper, when Allah told him to do sajda to something ghayrullah, other than Allah, Shaitan says, how can I do sajda to anyone other than you, Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he was saying that Shaitan has so much ma'rifah, that's why he denies and doesn't do sajda to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shaitan, what did he say? Shaitan says, Ya Allah, I will do anything, but don't make me do this. The riwayah says he would say, I will do such an act of worship that no one has done before, but don't make me do this. The exact thing me and you say, Ya Allah, that Hajj is very nice, you told me to do, but put it to the side, I'll do this instead. Or that fasting is very nice, but I will do something that is much better that no one else can do. If there was something better at that moment in time, Allah would have ordered me to do it. Shaitan says, I would do something much greater. It wasn't that he was such a great abid and worshipper, that's why he didn't do sajda. In actual fact, the reason behind his deviation during this point of time is simply, as the Quran says, the arrogance of this man. Because they came to Shaitan, after this point takes in place, this point in time. They came to him, after Adam alayhi salam is sent on this earth. They said, look, the angels, you can still do sajda now towards Adam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept. He says, no, I'm okay. Then during each part of the life of Adam, they said, look, you can still have a chance. Do sajda now. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive you. You can go back to where you were in the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No, I'm okay. Even when Adam alayhi salam died. When Adam salamullah alayhi died, and as we know, where is he buried? If a person goes to visit Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, we know that a person recites وَعَلَى ذَجِيعَيْكَ آدَمَ وَنُوهُ, that Adam is buried on one side of Amir al-Mu'mineen and Nuh is buried on the other. When he is buried, they came and they said, Allah still gives you an option. What's the option? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Adam is buried. He's under the ground. All you have to do is do a sajda next to his grave. Towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sajda is not for anyone other than Allah. Towards Allah. To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Next to the grave of Adam alayhi salam. Shaitan says, when he was alive, I didn't prostrate. I'm going to prostrate to him when he's dead. In other words, this told us something very interesting about the qualities of Shaitan. The first quality of Shaitan is that when a prophet of God leaves this world, Shaitan says that that prophet of God has died and is no longer living. If a person today therefore believes that a prophet of God, when he physically isn't on this earth, if a person believes that that prophet of God has died, that person is nothing else but Shaitan. Because the prophet of God is living, hayyun yurzaq, in the way that a shaheed still lives, not metaphorically. They are still living. They are still part of this dunya. Also this told us, Shaitan is that person who doesn't wish to visit the graves of the infallibles. Therefore, when I go to visit the graves of my A'imma alayhimus salam, this is something opposing the acts and the practice of Shaitan al-Rajim. Shaitan, why does he not do this sajda? Because of the arrogance he finds. And as we understand, ahadith say that when a person lowers himself in front of others, فَتَوَاضَعُوا يَرْفَعُكُمُ اللَّهُ, When a person lowers himself in front of others in his community and society, Allah says, the more he lowers, the more I raise up that person. And the more a person tries to raise himself up in society, it may be temporary, 2 months, 3 months, few years that people give him respect. But the more arrogant he becomes, eventually the more lower down Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pushes that person. This is the usul and qa'idah and the principle of Allah. Lower yourself in front of others, I'll raise you up more than you can imagine. Because there are certain people in this world, the most humble of individuals, like many of our ulama, like many of the companions, putting aside Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. These people, why are their names shining like stars in the horizons of heritage and history? Because they would lower themselves in front of the people. Even the Anbiya, we are told Ibrahim alayhi salam. As we know, Ibrahim is made at a certain point in time in his life Khalil, the friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Ibrahim alayhi salam says, one day I was in my house and I left. Whenever he leaves his house, his habit is that he locks the house and he takes the key with him for security reasons, precaution. He says, I left my house. When I came back in, I opened the door, I entered in, and I saw that there's a very beautiful youth that is standing there. I was alarmed. This is my house, the key is in my hand. I said, what are you doing here? Who has let you in? So that person, who of course is an angel in the form, Jibreel, in the form of a human being. Jibreel says, Rabbul Bayt. The owner of this house has let me in. So if someone said this to you, you would say, I'm the owner of the house, get out. When they said it to Ibrahim, he said, if the owner has let you in, what am I here to say anything? Because the owner is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I in this world don't own anything. I may think I own this Abba, but when I die, do I still have it? Ownership is something that remains with me. Whatever I have in this world is not owned by me. That's why we recite in the ziyarat and the du'as, for example, Jawshan Kabir, we say, Ya khayr al-warithin. Oh, the best of inheritors. Inheritance comes when? When I die, Allah re-inherits all of His property. Ibrahim says, if the owner of the house has allowed you to come in, who am I to say anything? He says, who are you? He says, I'm Jibreel. Why have you come? He says, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just now has appointed someone on this earth as his Khalil and friend. If you hear the reply of Ibrahim, you understand what Allah means. Lower yourself, I'll raise you. Ibrahim hears that Allah has made someone on this earth as his Khalil. He says, Ya Jibreel, I beg you one request. Tell me who that person is so that I can spend the rest of my life in servant of the Khalil of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If it's me or you, I want it to be me. I want to have jealousy. I want to make sure that it's no one else. Or I want to make sure that if it's someone who is Khalil, it's someone that I like, not my enemy. Ibrahim says, tell me who that person is, because if that person is loved by Allah, I would love to be in service of that person. Jibreel says, Ibrahim, this is the reason. This is the quality why when Allah chose to make anyone Khalil, He made Ibrahim alayhi salam the Khalil. That you have so much humility as a prophet of God and as an ulul azm. Once this has been understood, therefore, that the reason why shaitan goes against the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and does this sajda, what's his arrogance? The question comes, what was the effect of this? Did this action of him not performing sajda have any effects? And we understand there were several effects. Yes, فَخْرُجْ مِنْهَا, get out from here. The Prophet of Islam, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, mentions that رَانَ الشَّيْطَانَ أَرْبَعَ رَانَات. Shaitan, through all of his life, has cried out on 4 occasions, like he's never cried before. The first was when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed Suratul Hamd. As we know, Suratul Hamd, the riwayah says, is the cure for every sickness except for death. He says, when Suratul Hamd was revealed on the heart of the Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wa alihi, Shaitan cried out. The second moment he cried out, when the Prophet of Islam announces his prophethood. He's always a prophet, but when he announced it at the age of 40 and Bi'tha began, at that moment, ran shaitan. The third moment, when he was told, Fakhruj, get out from here, after this occasion, when he didn't do the sajda, get out from here, this was the third. And the fourth is when Allah said, Innaka rajim, you are accursed. Therefore, as we understand, the primary effect of him not doing sajda was that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala banished him. Get out from the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from those realms of proximity towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, we are told there's also another effect. Whenever I do sajda on this earth today, shaitan will come near that individual. And shaitan begins to weep and cry. Why? Because he says, this person is doing that which I was unable to do in my life. When I do sajda, the effect of him not prostrating at that moment in time when he was ordered to, is that when I do sajda, shaitan cries and laments and hates the mu'min for doing that sajda. That shaitan is far away from a person, because he sees you doing sajda, he'll cry and then he goes away. That I can't bear to see that person prostrating, doing that which I was unable to do. In other words, when a person does prostration to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not only is this most hated by shaitan, shaitan goes away from that place. Here we understand every single person on this earth, when they do sajda and prostration, makes shaitan cry. But there is one person in all of history, if you read all of the history, there's one person that when he prostrated, shaitan says, I saw this person's prostration. I was unable to control myself. Instead of crying, I stood up and I congratulated that person on his prostration. Sometimes you have enemies. That enemy, when he sees you doing so well, he can't help but to congratulate you. There was one person, shaitan is the enemy of all people that prostrate. There was one person, shaitan says, I couldn't bear to cry. I saw this person sujood, I had to congratulate him. This person is standing in the masjid of the Prophet of Islam sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Performing his ibadah and worship. As he is performing his ibadah and worship, shaitan says, I came to him in the form of a snake. I wrapped around his leg. This person continues in his ibadah. He would go into ruku, still nothing. I went further, I opened my mouth. He saw the fangs that were in my mouth. Again, he does nothing. He gets into sajda. I saw this person's prostration. When this person finished his salah, he said, O Ali ibn al-Husayn alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He says, I have seen all of the prostration of all anbiya, of every single person, but I only saw one prostration like you, anta sayyidus sajideen. Yes, we understand that the Prophet of Islam is sayyidus sajideen. All of them are Zainul Abidin. But there's a reason why Imam Sajjad got this and others didn't. And I don't want to get into that reason why. Of course, all of the Imam are Zainul Abidin. Imam Sajjad himself says, look at the worship of my father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, that is, I am nothing compared to him. However, shaitan for every single person, when they would prostrate and do sajda, shaitan says, I cried, but when I saw this person sujood, I couldn't help but congratulate him. That you are the masters of all that would prostrate. And that's why his son Al-Baqir salamullah alayhi would say that there would be certain moments in the year during which, as we know, one of the titles of the Imam is Dhuf Thafanat. Every 6 months or so, there would be pieces of skin that are formed due to his excess prostration. On his forehead, on his knees, in Arabic you call these thafana or thafanat. He said we'd see these pieces of excess. Because of his excess prostration to such an extent, we would have to cut these pieces every 6 months. And a time would come we would say, oh our father, Ya Abul Hasan, what should we do with these? Should we throw them away? And Sajjad would say, what do you mean throw them away? I wish for you to keep these with me when I am buried so I can show to Allah how I've prostrated on this earth. The effect of that time when shaitan doesn't do sajda is he cries for every single person sajda, but when it comes to Sayyid Sajjad's prostration. Why? Why was he Sayyid Sajideen? Because today it's very easy for me now to prostrate onto this earth as long as I wish to. But how can a person prostrate when his lips are dry without any water? How can a person prostrate when he says that there is so little food and water that food and water goes to all of the children? It's very easy for me to prostrate right now. Prostrate when you have the chains of Umar bin Sa'ad on your shoulders. It's very easy for me to prostrate right now. Prostrate when all that is above you is the sun of Kufa and Sham. It's very easy for me to prostrate at this moment. prostrate when you are in the dungeons and you can hear the daughter of Hussein crying, where is my father Abu Abdullah? Why was he Sayyidus Sajideen? He was Sayyidus Sajideen because he has prostrated in that place and during those times when no one else had prostrated. And I dare anyone to find me a riwayah or any moment in hadith which says that from Kufa and Sham, Sajjad even misses one nafilah prayer of the day. Not even one. Find even one fake hadith where he said he missed one nafilah or one mustahab prayer during that time. This person does sajda in such a way that Baqir Salamullah alayhi says, when it came to me giving his ghusl and kafan, I would begin to cry when I was pouring the water over his body because I would see the marks of these chains from Sham and Kufa. As we understand these masa'ib of the Ahlul Bayt during these nights, Imam Sajjad was asked about the masa'ib of Kufa and Sham. He says, let me tell you about the masa'ib and the tragedy of Kufa. And he mentions there are certain tragedy. Because we know that during the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen in the Battle of Siffin, a person was a companion of Imam Ali. He says, I became blind during Siffin. When I became blind during Siffin, I came to my master. I said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, Allah has given you the reins of this world in your hands. You can pray to Allah to give my eyesight back. Pray to Allah, I wish to see again. Will you hear the reply of Amir al-Mu'mineen? Amir al-Mu'mineen says, I can pray to Allah to give you your eyesight back, but a time will come when you would wish you were blind. Do you accept? He says, what do you mean? He says, yes, I can give you your eyesight. But after I die, a time will come where you would have wished that you had no longer been able to see. He says, Ya Abul Hasan, if this is the case, I don't want to have my eyesight back. Many years later, he said, one day I was in the streets of Kufa. I heard someone mentioning and speaking and giving a sermon just as if it was Amir al-Mu'mineen. I told the people, has Amir al-Mu'mineen come out from his grave? Someone said, no, that is the daughter of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Zaynab al-Kubra. I said, why is Zaynab giving a sermon in Kufa? They said, don't you know she has been made captive and paraded all through Kufa and Sham? He says, yes, this was that time where my master had told me if I had seen this, I would have wished to have been blind, because who can see the daughters of Zahra in this way? You wished you were blind, you were unable to see it. Sajjad was with them at every single moment in this tragedy, seeing the atrocities that take place. So someone came and said, Sajjad, tell us about the Masa'ib. Sayyidus Sajjad says the Masa'ib of Kufa, the first of the tragedies of Kufa was that when we got to the gate of Kufa, we were made to stand there for many hours. And after we would get tired, I said, oh, Umar bin Sa'd, why do you make us stand here? Umar bin Sa'd says, because I am decorating all of Kufa, because I have made all of you from Ahlul Bayt as prisoner. Sajjad says, then we would enter into Kufa, and the second of the tragedies is that we were made to stand at that place where they would sell the slaves of Kufa, and people would come to us and say, I wish to buy this slave, I wish to buy that slave, and we would say, we are not slaves, we are the progeny of Rasulullah. He says, and the third is as we were made to walk through the market of Kufa, whatever was in the hands of the people would be thrown on us. People would throw hot water on our faces. Sajjad says, a person would throw a piece of coal onto my head, and my turban would set on fire, and my hands are chained. I was unable to remove that turban. Sajjad said, the marks of that piece of coal are still on my head. These were the tragedies of Kufa. And then the narration comes at one time when they were imprisoned. One of the jailers said, I came to Sayyidus Sajjad. I said, Ya ibn Rasulillah, I understand that you wish to come out sometimes from the jail.
jail. But Ya Sajjad, tell your women, do not come out at night. Sajjad says, what do you mean come out at night? The man says, oh Ibn Rasulullah, when I close the door of the jail and all of the people go to sleep, there is a woman that sits on the road crying, Wa Zayna, Wa Ghariba. Tell that woman to stay in the jail at night time. Sajjad says, I entered into the prison. I said, Ya Ammati Zaynab, which of the women is it, Rabab or Layla Kulthum over there, that comes out of the prison in the night time, sitting on the road lamenting for my father Zayn? Zaynab says, no, none of us are doing this. Sajjad says, tonight when he locks the door, ask him that you wish to see who that person is. And that night then Zaynab says, I came out of the prison, and when I came out I saw this woman crying, and I would say to her, how do you know Hussein? How do you share the grief of Hussein? The woman would look at me and say, Zaynab, how did you not recognize your mother Fatima to Zahra? For Fatima wishes to cry and remember Hussein with Zaynab and Sayyid al-Sajjad, and to cry with Kulthum. And of the other tragedies from Kufa and Sham, Zaynab says, we were in the tents. Sajjad suddenly came out. He went to the tents of Umar bin Saad with the chains on his body. Next to the tents of Umar bin Saad, Sajjad says, Allahu Akbar. He begins to pray in Salah. Umar bin Saad says, I saw Sajjad is praying Salah next to my tent. I told the people of my army, come out and whip Sajjad as he is praying his Salah. They say they come out of the tent with the whips in their hands. Suddenly Zaynab says, I heard them saying, whip Sajjad. Zaynab says, Kulthum, Farwa, come and protect our nephew Sayyid al-Sajjad. And so when Umar bin Saad says, I would try to hit his body, Zaynab says, I would place my face in front and take the beatings of Umar bin Saad, and Kulthum would take the beatings from the back. And that's why when Sajjad was asked, what is the most difficult period of your life, he would say, Asham, Asham, Syria, and what I saw in Syria. على لعنة الله للقوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. تابع بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك مجيب الدعوات، إنك رافع الدرجات، إنك سامع الأصوات، إنك رافع الدرجات، إنك قاضي الحاجات، إنك على كل شيء قدير. يا حسين.